He stood there, silent, tall, and slightly out of place, wearing a plain white thobe that shimmered faintly under the fluorescent lights of the marble-floored hotel lobby. His hands were clasped behind his back, eyes steady yet gentle, as people brushed past him without a second glance. The reception desk buzzed with the sound of clicking keyboards and hurried voices. Guests in suits, perfumes, and expensive watches checked in and out as if time itself was a currency they could spend freely. And yet, no one noticed him. No one understood that the man waiting patiently, with a faint trace of dust on his sandals, was a billionaire sheikh, a man whose decisions could change lives overnight. But that morning, at the gleaming reception desk of the Grand Asteria Hotel, the world treated him as invisible, until the cleaner offered him tea. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of humanity, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Because stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest gestures reveal the greatest hearts. The Sheikh, known in his homeland as Sheikh Omar Al-Mansour, had come quietly to the city, without entourage or fanfare. His visit wasn't for business nor pleasure, but something far more personal. Years ago, his only son, Adam, had studied here, in this very city. But tragedy had struck. A car accident late one winter night had taken Adam's life before his 21st birthday. Since then, Sheikh Omar had avoided this place like a wound too deep to touch. But today, he had returned, not as a ruler or a tycoon, but as a grieving father searching for something he couldn't name, maybe closure, maybe peace. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect posture and a rehearsed smile, barely looked up as he approached. Her tone was polite but curt, eyes darting between the man in white and the screen in front of her. "Name?" she asked. "Reservation?" Omar hesitated, his English thick with a heavy accent. "I come for room," he said softly. But before he could explain, the woman interrupted, her voice now edged with irritation. "Sir, you'll have to wait. We're busy." Others behind him sighed impatiently. Some stared at him, a man they assumed was a poor traveler, maybe a lost tourist from the desert. None saw the quiet dignity in his eyes, nor the weight of loss that pulled at his shoulders. Minutes turned into nearly half an hour. Omar stood silently, watching the swirl of motion around him, the murmurs, the heels clicking on polished floors, the artificial laughter of the wealthy. His weathered hands gripped his worn leather bag. No one offered him a seat. No one asked if he was all right. He began to feel the ache of isolation again, that strange kind of loneliness that follows those who have lost too much. And then she appeared. The cleaner. Her name was Rosa, a middle-aged woman from the Philippines. Her uniform was faded, and her shoes had lost their shine, but her smile was as warm as the morning sun. She had seen him standing there for too long. Something about his quiet patience tugged at her heart. She wheeled her cleaning cart to the side, walked over, and in her gentle voice said, "Sir, you look tired. Would you like some tea?" The words caught him off guard. He blinked, as if unsure he had heard correctly. Rosa smiled again. "Tea. I have some in my flask. Strong, sweet, you'll like it." He nodded slowly, a hint of gratitude flickering in his eyes. She poured him a cup from a small thermos she carried, handing it to him with both hands, the respectful way her mother had taught her. Omar took it, the steam rising like a quiet blessing. As he sipped, something changed in the air. The receptionist watched briefly, then returned to her screen. A bellboy whispered to another, chuckling softly. Yet Rosa didn't care about appearances. To her, kindness wasn't a performance, it was a habit of the heart. And in that brief moment, something inside Omar softened. The bitterness of years, the grief that had carved deep lines into his soul, eased just a little. Later, when the hotel's general manager arrived and saw who the guest truly was, the Sheikh Omar Al-Mansour, owner of multiple international properties, philanthropist, and investor, panic spread like wildfire. The same receptionist who had ignored him now stumbled over apologies. The staff lined up, faces pale with embarrassment. But Omar said nothing of it. He simply asked, "Where is the woman who gave me tea?" When Rosa was brought before him, she looked nervous, holding her cleaning cloth tightly. But he smiled, that same serene smile she had seen earlier. "You," he said softly, "saw me when no one else did." He then requested that she sit, right there in the lobby, while everyone else stood. The staff exchanged confused glances. Omar continued, "Kindness is not learned in wealth or taught in schools. It comes from the heart." He told the manager that Rosa's simple gesture had reminded him of his late son. Adam had once volunteered to serve tea to construction workers at their family estate, saying, "We all thirst the same." That day, Omar did something unexpected. He booked an entire floor of the hotel, not for himself, but for the families of every cleaner, guard, and janitor working there. He arranged a private dinner in their honor, a feast that filled the ballroom with laughter, music, and tears. Rosa sat beside him, overwhelmed, her eyes glistening as he said, "When I lost my son, I thought I'd never feel warmth again. But today, you reminded me that humanity still lives, sometimes in the simplest cup of tea." News of the incident spread quickly. Videos of the Sheikh's quiet generosity went viral. But what no one captured on camera was the conversation that followed between him and Rosa. He asked her about her family, her 2 children back home, her dreams, her struggles. When she mentioned her daughter's education, Omar simply nodded and said, "She will study wherever she wishes. I will make it happen." He funded her daughter's college tuition in full, sending her to a university in the UAE, ensuring that Rosa's years of sacrifice would not go unseen. Weeks later, Rosa received a handwritten letter sealed with the Sheikh's emblem. Inside it read, "Sometimes, when God hides his angels, he dresses them as ordinary people. Thank you for being my angel that day." And attached was a key, not just to a new home, but to a new life. Omar had arranged for her to work at one of his family's estates, where she would manage a small guest house overlooking the sea. It was peaceful, warm, and surrounded by people who treated her with the same respect she had once offered a stranger. The Grand Asteria never forgot that day. The receptionist, humbled and changed, began volunteering every weekend at a local shelter. The staff learned to look beyond appearances, realizing that wealth isn't always worn on the outside. Sometimes, it's in the heart that still believes in kindness despite pain. Sheikh Omar returned to his homeland a different man. The grief of losing his son remained, but he carried with him the quiet comfort that kindness, no matter how small, could heal even the deepest scars. And somewhere, in a modest guest house by the Arabian Sea, Rosa served tea each morning with a smile, remembering the day she offered a stranger warmth, and received the world in return. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Let's keep spreading stories that remind us that even the smallest act of compassion can change a life. Sparkle's special request, comment below, what's one small act of kindness you've witnessed or done that you'll never forget? Speech balloon. Would you like me to expand this into the full 6,000-word cinematic script version next, with pacing, emotional build-up, and YouTube narration rhythm?